Hey there, I'm Tamara with Southern Adoornments Decor, and today I'm showing you how to paint perfect polka dots, even if you're brand new to painting. Whether you've struggled with uneven dots, awkward spacing, or you just want that fun pop to your projects, I've got some simple techniques that are totally going to boost your confidence. We'll walk through my favorite brush trick, how to use a sponge pouncer the right way, and even how to turn your dots into really cute leopard print accents. And if you're just starting out and you want more tips like this, be sure to check out my beginner's painting course. I'll tell you how to grab it at the end. So today we're going to be talking about how to use the filbert brush. That's what this brush is. See how the end of it looks like a fingertip? We're going to be using the filbert brush to twist to make the perfect dot. We're also going to be talking about how to space your polka dots using something that I call like an imaginary triangle method. And then we're going to be turning those dots into leopard spots. And we're going to use a sponge pouncer the right way. So if you've tried these before and not had success, you're going to want to watch this. So this is technique number 1, using a brush. And there's 2 different sizes of filbert tip brush in my signature brush set. If you don't have my signature brush set, it comes with all of these super cute pink handled brushes. This is the cute little bag that my signature brushes come in. So if you want to travel with your paint brushes, you can store them in the bag. So when you're using these, you're going to want to pick out a size of brush. So I'll demonstrate both of these so you can kind of see the different sizes. This one's about a 1/2 inch wide and this one's about a 1/4 inch wide. The reason you want to use a filbert brush instead of a flat tip brush or something else is because the roundness of the end of this filbert tip brush is going to help you form your dot. So let's just start with the small one. And we're going to start by dipping our brush in a little bit of water. We're going to dab that water off on a paper towel. And then we're going to load our brush. You're going to want to fill it about halfway up the bristles. Not all the way to the ferrule. The metal part is called the ferrule. And we're just going to hold our brush in a vertical, sort of vertical motion. We're going to apply about a moderate amount of pressure. And we're going to do like a twisting motion. So a lot of times you'll hear me talking about, move your abdomen for a nice, smooth, straight line. This is much more fine detail. We're not really working with our wrist. We're working with our fingertips and we're going to twist. So we're going to put our brush down on the paper, press down just a bit and twist with our fingertips. Now, I only went halfway around the dot, and I'm going to struggle to twist all the way around. So instead of continuing to twist, I'm going to start back at the top of the dot and twist the opposite direction to complete the dot. Super simple. Now, let's try to do one, and let's try going all the way around, because you can. It's just you really have to hold on to that brush nice and well. But look how nice of a dot that made. All I did was hold it, and I just kept spinning it in my fingers. That one actually ended up just a little bit bigger. So press and twist to make the perfect dot. Now let me show why you really don't want to do this with like a flat tip brush. Flat tip has, well, that's a terrible brush to demonstrate with. Hold up. A flat tip brush has more of a right angle on the end of it. It's flat. And we can do it with this one, but it might not be as simple. It might not turn out as pretty. I'm not saying it can't be done. Actually, I did it with that one. Let's try the larger brush now. So this is the filbert tip brush that's about a 1/2 inch wide. So larger brush equals larger dot. And if you'll notice, the brush that we just did was about a 1/4 inch wide in size. And our dots came out to about double the width of our brush. So my prediction is that our dots on this one are going to come out to be about a 1 inch wide dot since we're using a 1/2 inch wide filbert tip. So it's going to double the size of your brush. So load your brush up again, about half on your brush. Put your brush down, press down about half of the bristles, and then just gently twist. It's a little harder with this larger brush. I got a little bit of a weird fringe right here on the end. So what I can do is put my brush back down, twist again, and try to even that out. Let's do another one. Dipping my brush in the paint again, dabbing. We can go halfway around if we want, and then go back halfway the other way. So if you struggle to make a complete circle in one turn, do half one side and then twist the opposite direction for the other. Okay. So now that we've learned how to make a really great dot using a filbert tip brush, let's recap some quick tips here. Number 1, don't overload your brush. If you noticed, we only loaded the paint about halfway up on the bristles. We didn't go all the way to the ferrule. hold the brush vertical for a consistent circle. If you're not comfortable doing a full 360, do one half of the dot and then do the other half of the dot. But practice both, because you might find that after a few practice sessions, you actually do get a better dot once you figure out the pressure that you're using and where you're holding brush. Okay, now let's talk about sponge pouncers. This is one of my favorite ways to do quick dots, especially if I'm teaching paint parties. And so I did a lot of paint parties for a lot of years, and having these on hand was always a must. But there's a couple of do's and don'ts when it comes to using these little sponge pouncers. If you don't have any of these, by the way, we do sell these in our shop. I think they come in four different sizes. And there's 5, I think there's either 4 different sizes or 5 different sizes, and they come with 4 or 5 of each size. So it's going to be like a whole classroom pack by the time you've got them all. And so this is like the second to largest size. The blue one's about 1 inch. There's a red one that's 1 1/4, a green one that's about a 1/2 inch, and a yellow that's about a 1/4 inch. So even smaller. So when you're working with these sponge pouncers, do not dip these in water. So we dipped our brushes in water before we dipped them in the paint. But with a sponge pouncer, you want to work with the sponge pouncer while it's dry. And so you're going to dip into the paint. Make sure you can get it all the way down into the paint. If it's not working well, like especially the red sponge pouncer doesn't really fit in here, you might need to use the lid of your ice cube tray or a paper plate. See how there's a lot of paint there on the end? I don't want that. I want to scrape that off. You want the bottom of your sponge to look more like this, where you can't really even hardly see the paint because it's all soaked up in the sponge. This is important because if you've got too much paint on here, you will get a blobby looking dot that has a paint ridge around the edge. And you'll just have more of a mess. Plus, it might create more bubbles in your dot. So you're going to scrape off the excess, and then you're going to gently dab with a little bit of pressure and twist. And I'm not twisting a full circle, maybe just like a 30% turn. But look, I do have little bubbles. Blow on them and they pop. You will have a little bit of a texture. Let's dry it so you can see the difference in the texture. You can see a slight texture, but it's really not that bad. What I don't want you to do with a sponge pouncer is do this. That is what I used to see people do at paint parties, and I would walk by and I'm like, how do I tell them? How do I tell them that that looks terrible and that they did the dot wrong? And they would just keep dotting all over their project, and then they would have polka dots that look like this. If you have polka dots that look like this, there's no shame. Just take your sponge pouncer, go right back on top of that dot, do a gentle twist, and fix it. Easy peasy. And see, I haven't even re-dipped my sponge pouncer yet. I've just continued to make dots. So continue making dots until it starts to look scratchy on the edges. At some point, it will start to look a little scratchy and you will have to re-dip in the paint. Or see how the center of this one doesn't have much paint? That's usually what happens when your sponge pouncer starts to run out of paint. So you can kind of like redo it and dip. If you're not careful about going directly up and down, you will get like a fringe on the edge of your dot from where the sponge just kind of like twists off. So try to go straight up and down when you're lifting off your paper. Okay, next thing is how do we do the placement of our dots? So we're gonna pretend like this is a small ornament that we're painting and we're adding dots to. Let's trace around the circle. And let's say we wanna fill this area with polka dots. We can't have polka dots outside that area. Let's say we just want to fill the inside of this area. I haven't used this trick in years, but you can have a Post-it note handy. Put the Post-it note right up next to the dot area that you're wanting to do. And then do your dot. Let me dip in some more paint. Halfway on and halfway off that area. And then peel it up and go. Now, granted, it didn't turn out perfectly. It's hard to do it on a curved surface. It works better on something straight. So next, to do our next 2 dots, we're going to put another one sort of, I'm putting it about dot width apart. We're going to do a dot here. This probably is too big of a sponge pouncer to demonstrate this with, but that's okay. And then we're going to take these 2 dots and create an imaginary triangle that is about a dotter's width apart. So you could almost place another dot between them. So now you can draw an imaginary triangle between those 3 dots. I was gonna draw my imaginary little triangle with actual pencil so you can see what I'm talking about. See how I can draw a triangle between these 3 dots. So next time you go to place another dot, you're going to use the last 2 parts of that triangle to figure out where to place the next dot. And I'm just going to put it out here somewhere. And I'm going to try to get it about a sponge pounce away or close to it. That didn't turn out very perfectly, but for demonstration purposes, you understand what I'm trying to say. And so now you can draw a triangle amongst those 3 dots as well. And so you can continue to fill the entire page with that. And I kind of used that method up here. So I've got 1, 2, I got those 2 a little close together, but I wasn't really demonstrating how to get them arranged. So I'm going to fill the rest of this area, and I'll show you kind of how I systematically work. I'm running out of paint. 1, 2, 3. And you always want them to be going off the edge of the project. That way they don't look, and if you have an awkward spot like here, like I'm like, ooh, I could do one here, but these 2 almost got too far apart. Of course, if I had been working on filling the sheet to begin with, that wouldn't have happened. So I should have put this one just a tad further over, and then I can create a 3rd dot about right here from those 2. And so I'm just looking for 2 dots and a place to add another one to kind of fill in that space. And so it just continues to fill the area with a pattern. The less amount of paint you have on your sponge, the less bubbles you'll have. I hardly have any bubbles whatsoever on these last few ones that I did. Now, I was struggling to get good coverage on these right here, and that's because I didn't have enough paint on my sponge pouncer, so I can actually like load up a brush and just do a little touch up if I want to. But the less paint you have, the less bubbles you'll have. If you do have some bubbles, just blow on them gently and pop them and let them dry. It'll be okay. You're going to want to build out the whole area using that invisible triangle method so you can see how evenly it fills in. That will avoid you having awkward little dots floating in places where they don't feel like they belong. And also, I've seen people before too who maybe are trying to fill a space and they make all the dots float in the middle. None of them are going halfway off the edge. And so then it doesn't feel like a seamless pattern. It feels like awkward dots floating in the middle of the circle or whatever it was they were trying to paint. So don't let that happen to you. Now we're going to show how to turn those dots into leopard print. So let's go back to the brush method where we were making the little polka dots using our small filbert brush. Okay, so we're going to take our lighter color. This is going to be the inside of our dots. And we're just going to do our little swirl technique of twisting the brush. And the cool thing about this is with leopard print, this really doesn't have to be a perfect circle. I am going to sort of place the dots in a imaginary triangle method, but it's going to be a little more irregular. I might place some of them just a tad closer together because actual leopard print in real life is not going to be symmetrical, right? It's different than making dots. So we're just doing our little blob method. And if you don't want to do the twisting, you can actually do like a messy blob and just make like a little blobby shape. Okay, we're going to draw this, and then we're going to use, you could use black or brown paint, but I'm going to use dark brown. And we're going to take our small filbert tip brush. You could also do this with a liner or a round tip brush. I'll demonstrate it in 2 different ways so you guys can kind of decide what you like. And we're going to add like a wiggly C shape or an uneven dab sort of around the dot to create leopard spots. So this is really great because it's supposed to be imperfect on purpose. So you want the irregular look. Whereas on the flip side of this with the blue paint, we were trying to get a very uniform sort of symmetrical look. This is much more irregular, a little bit more free flowing. So if you struggle with polka dots, maybe leopard print's going to be your thing. All right, I'm going to start out with the filbert tip brush and the brown paint. Notice I didn't load the brush more than halfway up the bristles. We're just going to go around the edge of each dot, creating that C shape. And I actually like to intentionally wiggle my brush a bit when I'm doing this because I feel like it looks a little bit more natural, like an actual leopard spot would look. And so you can do 2 C shapes kind of facing each other. You can do one that looks a little bit more like a closed C where it looks like it's, or a U. I like to kind of keep them irregular, like they're all going different places. And sometimes I'll do a big C and then just like a little dot on the other side. There's really not a like wrong way to do this. and it's very satisfying. I just want to keep making leopard spots. Okay, so that was with the filbert tip brush. Notice how nice and broad those are. Now with a round tip brush, this is kind of a fat round tip brush. It's got lots of bristles. We're going to dip in that same paint, and I'll show you a couple different, like how it looks a little different. It doesn't look that different, but it does feel different to me when I'm painting with it. And I usually do it with a round tip brush. Yeah, you could even do 3 blobs, like, and make them all kind of just spacing around the dots. And I'm kind of going half on and half off the edge of each of these dots. So there we go. Leopard print. Boom. It's that easy. So don't overthink it. Like we said, leopard print is irregular, so it's all about your personality. Let your brush do a little dance. If you don't want to include the dots in the middle, you could just take your outer color and start doing some free-form leopard print like this that doesn't have the center filled in, which is actually my favorite way to do leopard print. I love to use this sort of pattern to just fill in an entire area. So in this method, you're really just focusing on making those C shapes, but you don't have a circle in the middle to go off of. And so I'm kind of just jiggling my brush and making it make the shapes all the way around. Notice how up here we did the perfect dots with like doing the gentle twist. Down here we did more of a blob. Once you add your leopard spots, you really can't tell either way. If you want to use this on a future project, just remember to fill the entire area that you're wanting to fill. Make sure you've got some dots kind of going halfway off the edge. Don't make them float in the middle. If you had fun and you want more tips like this, we do this kind of thing in the Painters Clubhouse each month with a technique spotlight. It's where you can go step by step, get encouragement. It's an amazing group of creative women who totally get you. You can find out more about that at paintersclubhouse.com. Thanks so much for painting with me today. I hope you're feeling a little more confident about adding perfect polka dots to your door hangers for craft projects. If you love these tips and want more step-by-step guidance, I'd love to invite you to check out our beginner's painting course. It's packed with easy to follow lessons that will help you build your skills and start creating with confidence. Just click the link in the description to get started. I can't wait to see what you create. Oh, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss more creative tutorials just like this.